in a tall, round tower at the edge of a quiet, sleepy town, lived a young writer named Finn. His room was a cozy, circular space filled with books, maps of fantastical places, and the wonderful, comforting smell of old paper and leather. Finn loved stories more than anything. He loved reading them, and even more, he loved writing them. But lately, a great sadness had settled over him, as heavy and as grey as a rain cloud. He had run out of ideas. He would sit at his large wooden desk for hours, a blank sheet of paper before him, and his mind, which had once been a bustling marketplace of dragons, heroes, and magical lands, was now completely empty. He would dip his plain goose feather pen into his pot of black ink, but he could not think of a single word to write. The stories had simply gone away, leaving a lonely silence in their place. He looked out his window at the whispering forest and the rolling green hills, but even their beauty no longer sparked his imagination. He was a writer without a story, a singer without a song, and he was beginning to fear that the magic of his imagination had left him forever. One afternoon, while searching for a fresh sheet of paper, Finn's hand brushed against a small, loose knob on the underside of his ancient oaken desk. He had never noticed it before. Puzzled, he pulled on it. With a soft click and a puff of sweet-smelling dust, a long, thin, secret drawer slid open. It was a drawer no one had opened in 100 years. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded, dark blue velvet, lay two beautiful objects that seemed to hum with a quiet, sleeping magic. The first was a long, elegant quill pen, made from a single, perfect, snow-white feather. Its tip was not a normal, carved nib, but a small, flawlessly clear crystal that seemed to hold a tiny, sleeping rainbow within it. Beside the quill was a small, crystal inkpot, but the ink inside was not black. It was a swirling, miniature galaxy of the deepest blues, purples, and golds, with tiny silver specks that drifted slowly like distant stars. A small aged label was tied to the inkpot with a golden thread. In beautiful looping handwriting, it read, "Imagination Ink, for stories that have not yet been told." A jolt of pure, unadulterated hope and excitement shot through Finn. This was magic. Real, true magic. Without a second thought, Finn pushed his old plain pen aside and dipped the magical quill into the swirling, colorful ink. The crystal tip seemed to drink in the light, and it began to glow even more brightly. He turned to a fresh sheet of paper, his hand trembling with excitement. He didn't even have to think of a story. A story came to him, a story of a brave little mouse who sailed the seas in a nutshell. As he touched the quill to the page, the words flowed out of him as if from a river. And they were not plain, black letters. The words he wrote shimmered on the page as if made of pure starlight. They glowed with a soft, golden light, and the letters themselves seemed to dance and swirl with a life of their own. He wrote and wrote, the quill gliding effortlessly across the page, telling the little mouse's story with a beauty and a magic he had never been able to capture before. For the first time in months, he was not a lonely boy in a tower. He was a creator, a true storyteller, a partner with the magical quill. He was so lost in the joy of creation that he didn't notice the swirling, colorful ink in the inkpot was slowly, almost imperceptibly, beginning to fade. For many nights, Finn was the happiest he had ever been. As soon as dusk fell, he would sit at his desk with his magical quill and the ink of imagination, and he would write. He wrote stories of gnomes who polished riverstones, of girls who could talk to shadows, and of bears who learned to love their dreams. The quill seemed to hold every story in the universe, and it shared them with him generously. His room was soon filled with stacks of paper, each one glowing with the beautiful, magical, starlit words of a new and wonderful tale. But one evening, as he was in the middle of a particularly exciting story about a griffin, the quill's beautiful writing began to falter. The starlit words grew a little dimmer, a little less magical. A feeling of dread crept into Finn's heart. He looked at the crystal inkpot. The brilliant, swirling, multicolored liquid was almost gone. All that was left at the bottom was a dull, grey, and barely glowing puddle. The ink of imagination had run out. He tried to dip the quill again, but it came up with only a faint, sad, grey light. The quill, which had felt so alive in his hand, now felt like a simple, empty feather. The magic was gone. A deep despair settled over Finn. He had found the most wonderful magic in the world, only to have it disappear. He slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. He was just a boy with an empty inkpot and a room full of half-finished stories. As he sat there, his heart full of sadness, he felt a faint tickle on the back of his hand. He looked up. The magical quill, which had been lying still on the table, had lifted itself into the air. It was floating before him, and the white feather was gently tapping the back of his hand to get his attention. Then, a soft, shimmering, whispering voice, like the sound of turning pages, echoed in his mind. "The ink is not gone," the voice whispered. "It is simply used up. Imagination ink is not made in a factory. It is made from wonder. It is made from the new and beautiful things you see in the world. To refill the pot, you must refill your own eyes with new sights." The quill then floated over to the door of the tower room and tapped it gently, a clear instruction. "Go outside," it whispered. "Look at the world not like a writer looking for a story, but like a child seeing it for the first time. Find 3 new wonders, and the ink will return. A new kind of hope, a more practical and determined kind, sparked in Finn's heart. The magic wasn't gone. He just had to earn it. He carefully placed the quill and the empty inkpot into a small leather satchel, and, for the first time in a very long time, he left his tower room with a purpose other than to get more bread from the town baker. He walked down the winding stone stairs and out into the world. He decided to walk into the Whispering Woods, the ancient forest that bordered his town, a place he had described in 100 stories but had rarely explored himself. The sun was warm, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, making them whisper their own stories. He tried to follow the quill's advice. He didn't try to think of a story. He just looked. He noticed the intricate, lacy pattern of the moss growing on a fallen log. He saw the way the sunlight filtered through the canopy, creating dancing coins of light on the forest floor. He saw a busy little beetle with a shell that shimmered with all the colors of a rainbow. He walked with no destination in mind, his eyes open and his heart ready to be filled with the simple, quiet wonders of the world. Feeling refreshed and inspired, Finn continued his walk. The quill's whisper had said to find 3 wonders, and he now searched with an eager heart. He followed a small, babbling brook, its water so clear he could see the colorful, smooth pebbles. On the bottom, as he rounded a bend, he saw a plume of steam rising from a flat, sun-warmed rock by the water's edge. He crept closer, his footsteps silent on the mossy bank, and peeked through the leaves. There, sunning itself on the rock, was a creature so magical it took his breath away. It was a dragon, but it was not a great, fearsome, mountain-sized beast. It was a tiny dragon, no bigger than Finn's hand. Its scales shimmered with the brilliant, iridescent colors of a dragonfly's wing, and a tiny, harmless curl of smoke was drifting from its nostrils as it dozed peacefully in the sun. It was the most beautiful and delicate creature he had ever seen. He watched, holding his breath, as it yawned a tiny, sleepy yawn, revealing a little pink mouth with no scary teeth at all. He had always written about dragons as giant, terrifying monsters to be fought. He had never once imagined a dragon that was small, peaceful, and utterly enchanting. The world, he was realizing, was so much more creative and surprising than even his own imagination. He had found his second wonder. As he walked deeper into the woods, he heard a sound he had never heard before. It was a faint, beautiful, chiming melody, like tiny glass bells ringing in the wind. He followed the sound, pushing aside a large fern to enter a small, hidden clearing he had never seen before. In the very center of the clearing, bathed in a single, perfect sunbeam, was a single, beautiful flower. It was a large, bell-shaped blossom, its petals the color of the deepest twilight sky, a rich, velvety purple. And as Finn watched, the flower was singing. With every gentle puff of the breeze, the flower's petals would vibrate, releasing a series of perfect, harmonious, bell-like notes. It wasn't just a flower. It was a musical instrument being played by the wind itself. Finn sat down on the soft grass, completely enchanted. He had written about magical singing flowers before, but he had never imagined that something so truly wonderful could actually exist. He didn't try to write it down. He just sat and listened and let the beautiful, gentle music wash over him, filling him with a feeling of pure, simple wonder. He felt a little bit of the world's magic seep into his heart, and he knew, without a doubt, that he had found his first wonder. Finn left the tiny dragon to its nap and continued on, his mind buzzing with the beautiful things he had seen. He climbed a small hill that gave him a clear view of the sky. He lay on his back in the soft, warm grass and watched the big, fluffy, white clouds drift by. He had described clouds in his stories 100 times, always as castles or dragons. But today he just watched. He saw how the sunlight made their edges glow like silver linings. He watched how they changed their shapes slowly, gracefully, pushed by winds he could not feel. As he watched, a group of smaller clouds drifted towards a very large, billowy cloud, and for a moment they looked exactly like a magnificent, white sailing ship with smaller boats following in its wake, sailing serenely across the vast, blue ocean of the sky. It was so perfect, so beautiful, and so peaceful. It wasn't a monster or a battle. It was just a quiet, majestic journey. He didn't need to invent a story for it. The sky was already telling one, a story of peace and travel and endless possibility. He lay there for a long time, feeling the warmth of the sun and the coolness of the grass, simply watching the sky's gentle, silent play. This was his third wonder, the simple, profound beauty of looking up. With his heart full and his eyes brimming with the memory of the 3 wonders, Finn knew it was time to return. He walked back through the forest, but now he saw it with new eyes. Every leaf, every stone, every ripple in the brook seemed to hold its own little story, its own small piece of magic. He climbed the winding stairs back to his tower room, no longer feeling the heavy weight of loneliness, but the light, happy energy of inspiration. He sat down at his desk and eagerly opened his leather satchel. He took out the crystal inkpot, his heart thumping with hope, and he gasped. The inkpot was no longer filled with a dull, grey puddle. It was full to the brim once more with a swirling, vibrant, living galaxy of color. But this time, it was different. As he looked closely, he could see the wonders he had just witnessed swirling within the ink. He saw the velvety purple of the singing flower, the iridescent shimmer of the tiny dragon's scales, and the pure, fluffy white of the cloud ship, all dancing together with the familiar blues, golds, and starlit specks. The ink was not just restored, it was renewed. It was now made of his own real experiences. He had not just refilled the inkpot, he had refilled his own imagination. Finn eagerly took up the beautiful white quill. Its crystal tip was once again glowing with a vibrant, multicolored light, seeming to hum with an energy that matched his own. He dipped it into the renewed ink and turned to a fresh sheet of paper. This time, a new kind of story flowed from him. It was not a story that the quill told him, but a story that he told the quill. He wrote about a gentle, singing flower, a tiny, peaceful dragon, and a magnificent ship that sailed the seas of the sky. His words were his own, born from the real magic he had seen with his own eyes. The quill seemed to add its own magic, making his descriptions more beautiful, his sentences more musical. The starlit words that flowed onto the page were brighter and more vibrant than ever before, because now they were infused with real wonder. He realized that the quill was not the source of the stories. The world was the source of the stories. The quill was just a beautiful and magical partner, a tool that helped him translate the wonders of the world into words that could be shared. He was no longer just copying down magic, he was creating it, a partnership between his own experiences and the ancient magic of the quill. As he wrote, he felt a deeper connection to the magical quill. He looked at it, its white feather so pure, its crystal tip so full of light, and he felt a wave of gratitude. He understood its purpose now. It wasn't there to simply give him stories when he was empty. It was there to gently push him out into the world, to encourage him to fill his own well of imagination. The quill's whisper had been a lesson, a kind and wise piece of advice from an ancient friend. The magic was not a gift to be used up, but a partnership to be nurtured. The quill needed him just as much as he needed it. It needed his curious eyes, his open heart, and his willingness to go out and see the world, so that it would have new colors and new wonders to fill its ink. He looked from the beautiful, glowing words on the page to the swirling, vibrant ink, and then to the magical quill itself, and he smiled. They were a team, and together they would tell the most wonderful stories the world had ever known, stories born not just from a magical object, but from the beautiful, endless magic of the world itself. Finn's tower room was transformed. It was no longer a place of sad, empty silence. It became his library of wonders. Every day, he would go for a walk, not on a quest, but simply on a noticing expedition. He would take his satchel with the quill and inkpot, but he wouldn't write. He would just watch. He would watch the way a spider spun its intricate web in the morning dew. He would watch the way the sunset painted the clouds in 100 different shades of pink and orange. He would watch the way a tiny seed sprouted from the dark earth, pushing its way towards the sun. And every evening, he would return to his tower, his heart and his inkpot full of new colors and new wonders. His room, once filled with empty pages, was now filled with his own beautiful, glowing stories. He pinned them to the walls, and the starlit words filled the circular room with a soft, gentle, and ever-present light. It was like living inside a constellation of his own making. The stories were a beautiful, tangible reminder that the world was full of endless magic. and that all he ever had to do to find it was to step outside his door and open his eyes. One evening, as Finn was writing a new story about the spider he had seen, he looked at his inkpot. He noticed that the swirling colors had become a little bit dimmer after his long session of writing. But this time, he did not feel a pang of fear or despair. He simply smiled. He knew that the ink was not gone forever. He knew that tomorrow he would go for another walk. Perhaps he would watch the river, or maybe he would climb the hill and watch the stars appear. He knew that the world would be waiting for him, ready to show him 3 new wonders, ready to fill his heart and his inkpot once more. He understood the greatest secret of all. The story is never ending. As long as there were sunrises and sunsets, as long as there were tiny dragons and singing flowers, as long as there was a world full of quiet, beautiful secrets to discover, he would never run out of stories to tell. The magic was not in the quill or in the ink. The magic was in the world itself, and it was a well that would never run dry. The quill and the ink were just a beautiful way to share it. As the moon rose high in the sky, a gentle sleepiness finally began to pull at Finn's eyelids. He carefully put the quill and the inkpot back into their secret drawer, a silent thank you passing between them. He had done enough writing for one night. He walked over to his bed, his heart full and his mind at peace. His room was no longer a lonely tower, but a warm, glowing sanctuary of his own creation. The soft light from the magical stories he had written on the walls cast gentle, dancing shadows, and they felt like friendly companions. He snuggled under his warm blankets and looked out his window at the whispering forest, which now felt less like a distant view and more like a dear old friend, full of stories he couldn't wait to discover. He was no longer a writer with an empty page. He was a boy with a world full of wonders to explore, a magical quill to help him share them, and a heart that was finally, truly, full of stories again. With a soft, contented sigh, his mind already dreaming of the new wonders tomorrow would bring, Finn, the happy writer, closed his eyes and drifted off into a deep and peaceful sleep. And so, Finn, the writer, learned that the best stories are not found in books, but are waiting to be discovered in the quiet wonders of the world. Now it's your turn to discover your own magical tale. Close your eyes, let your imagination be your guide, and dream a wonderful new story. Good night. If you enjoyed our fable tonight, we hope you'll join us again. Please like and subscribe to Bedtimes Fable to help us share more gentle stories with the world. Sweet dreams.